Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody. This is Howard Fox, and welcome to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Our guest today is Rocky Romanella. Rocky is an international motivational keynote speaker, consultant, CEO, and director with over 40 years of boots on the ground experience. Rocky is also the author of Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership. Rocky uses his over 40 years of experience to explore the ways a true leader can add value as a trusted advisor, mentor, and visionary who uses a process approach to lead the organization and its people to new levels of success. He believes the true measure of a great leader is someone who leaves things a little better than they found them. Rocky, welcome to the Success Insight podcast.
Well, Howard, it's a pleasure to be on your show, and I look forward to speaking with you and your audience.
Leadership is such a huge topic. As I was sharing before we began the podcast, I just, for the heck of it, went out on Google and did a quick search of just the words leadership skills. And I came back with 620 million hits. I searched on becoming a leader, and I got back 326 million hits. I think it's safe to say, with your experience being in corporate America for some 40 years, you've learned a little bit about leadership.
Well, I think leadership is something that we all have concerns about. And I think we're all leaders at one time or another. I mean, often people will say to me, well, I'm not a leader, I'm an individual contributor. And I always say to people, well, no, that's not true at all. You are a leader. It's the way you go about doing your job. The fact that people come and talk to you because, for example, you may be an individual contributor, but you're the subject matter expert. So people come to you, they ask you questions, they emulate you in the way you go about maybe doing your research and the way you interact with others inside the organization. So I think we're all leaders at one time or another. I think we just get caught up on titles too often. So yeah, leadership is that subject that there's a lot of conversation about. Those Google hits really reinforce that people are always looking those things up. But I think it's an important skill that we all at one time or another have to be able to exercise and learn and understand and feel comfortable in that role as a leader.
A question that I often hear, whether it was in graduate school when I attended, or even after with a variety of conferences and talking to other coaches, is the question, is leadership, is it something you just are? Do you grow into it? Is it part of your DNA? I'm just curious what your perspective is on that.
The old question we used to, at all the workshops used to be, are leaders born or made? And so for me, I think we all learn to become leaders. I mean, maybe there are those individuals that were born leaders. I mean, I certainly wasn't. I mean, I never thought about that. I think there's those mile markers along the way, though, that we don't recognize as necessarily pure leadership. They're just things that we do. We either thrust into them or we accept. For example, when you're the captain of the Little League team, I mean, you don't sit there and say, well, I'm going to go in and be the leader today. No, you're the captain of the Little League team, or it just becomes a natural part of who you are, what you do, or you're the captain of the cheerleading squad, the soccer team. And I think what happens is that you desire to be good at it, right? And you say to yourself, well, look, if someone's going to be the leader, and it's me, I better work at this and be good at it, right? Someone's going to be the best at it. Why not me? So I think that's what kind of drives all of us, regardless of your personality or your style. Once you're in that role, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well be good at it or try to at least learn to be the best I can at it. So no, I'm a believer that it's a developed skill, and it's one that you're always working on.
I love the metaphor you used of the mile marker, because all of us in our lives, and I think I'm pretty accurate by saying all of us, or let's just say almost all of us, have moments in our life where we have to make a decision, where we take action or we let go or we assist. And whether we're there to take that action and do something with it, assist somebody and they're taking an action, or just letting things go. So maybe there's those crossroads and there's three paths we can take. And that experience of doing one of those things just continues to build on the other as we go on with our life and gain new experiences. So I love that idea of the mile marker. And then along that road, there are people who are mentors, guides, advisors, a team leader, a supervisor, a manager, who can influence us as a leader or an up and coming leader. And then we can kind of see the impact of what those encounters have on us. I'd love if you would share, before we start talking more about your book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, would you share a little bit about your background? Because I think folks that hear you or learn about you and your work are going to say, wow, they're going to say, wait a minute, I know this man's work. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Rocky.
Oh, thank you, Howard. That's very, very kind of you. So I started out June 15th, 1976, got a job at UPS unloading trailers. I was working my way through college. I went to St. John's University in New York. And my dad, rest his soul, said, hey, one of my kids is going to college. He looked at me and goes, you're the oldest, you're going to school, but we got no money. So it sounds familiar. It doesn't matter what generation, right? Everybody's got the same issue paying your way through school. Well, UPS had a part-time job, and it gave me the opportunity to go to school during the day and work at night at UPS and frankly, pay my way through college. And so I started unloading trailers, and I went to school to be a high school history teacher and a baseball coach. So that's my passion. But I quickly realized as I was working my way through school, I became a part-time supervisor in UPS and had a few significant events along my career. The significant event for me there was I started to realize that the best leaders, those individuals who could get their people to connect the dots, they really were coaching and training the individuals in their care. And so I thought to myself, well, wait a second, I can still be a coach and a teacher. It's just in a different classroom. The classroom for me will be business. So I enjoyed my time at UPS. I had a promotion from within policy that I took advantage of. And fortunately for me, although I took advantage of it through hard work, UPS saw more in Rocky Romanella than Rocky Romanella saw in himself. And my dad had said to me, look, two things when I started the job. Whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you, and then learn your job and learn some more. And so along the way, Howard, when they would tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, we got a job for you, it's a promotion, we're going to move you to Chicago, I kind of looked at them like, I'm sure the look I gave them was like, you sure you got the right guy here? There's not somebody smarter than me that you could give this job to? But all I could hear my dad say was, whatever they ask you to do, say yes and thank you. And so I would say, okay, if you think I'm the right person. And what I learned from that as a leader, you're going to have to believe in your people oftentimes until they're ready to believe in themselves. They may not have the confidence yet. They may not have the skill yet, but your belief in them carries them through those difficult early periods. And then you get that kind of break-even point where their skill and their confidence kind of matches up. And then you start to take a step back, right? Because once they're really good, you let them fly. They don't need to be overmanaged. They don't need you to micromanaging and question them. Now you kind of step back, and now you're the cheerleader. And so that was another valuable lesson I learned through my tenure at UPS, is that as leaders, we have to believe in our people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And that's how you get them through that period. And so through this promotion from within policy, as opportunities presented themselves, I took those opportunities. For example, we purchased mailboxes, et cetera, and then rebranded to the UPS store. Today, that network is over 5,000 stores strong, all independent business owners. And for me, that was a direct report. And I learned so much from those individuals. And I really learned that entrepreneurs are those individuals who are all in. I have such great respect for that small business owner, because in a large company, you can say you have P&L responsibilities, but no one's more vested than a small business owner, right? Because they take, Howard, everything they own, slide it across the table, and say, I'm all in. And
we're all in.
That's right. And at the end of the day, they hit the cash register, the draw opens, they pay their people, they pay their vendors. And what's left in that cash register is what they take home for their family. That, to me, I have such great respect for small business owners. And frankly, I don't know if I could have done that. And so I look at them and I learned so much from them. And I said, wow, these are the individuals that if you want to learn about business, spend time with a small business owner, because they really understand what it means to be vested, what it means to really have that ownership opportunity or abilities. And then we purchased over 20 companies and built the UPS Supply Chain Solutions. So I integrated those companies and then ran this side of the world for UPS. I retired after 36 years at UPS. And then we moved 9 times across the country. I mean, from New Jersey, where I started, Syracuse, Chicago, Des Moines, Iowa. Picture Rocky Romanella in Des Moines, Iowa.
You're a little out of place.
Wow, great people. We love living there. Number one question I would always get asked, hey, are you in the witness protection program? I'm like, no. I'd be Joe Smith if I was in a witness protection program, right? But it was a great chance to meet people throughout the country. And so it was a great opportunity. Retired from UPS, was recruited to be a CEO of a telecom company. We built cell towers, upgraded cell towers, the installation of cable and DirecTV, those kinds of things. Had a sale of that company. And then I guess, Howard, the thing you can say I failed the most at is retirement. I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? And so for me, leadership is
That's a good problem to have, a fail at retirement. That's good.
Yeah. To me, leadership is this concept of you leave things a little better than you found them. And so I felt like I met so many wonderful people throughout my career, people who mentored me, people I got a chance to work with and mentor as well. And what was my best way of giving back was to write the book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, and maybe kind of in a story form, have some of the lessons I learned or some experiences I learned, put in a fun kind of lesson-filled book. And then through the company I started, 360 Management Services, we do keynote speaking, leadership training, and process improvement types of consulting. It was a way for at least for me to stay active, meet wonderful people, and maybe give back a little.
Excellent synopsis. And I'd love to kind of circle back on a couple items. As you were going through your tenure with UPS, I mean, you started unloading the trailers, and I will be remiss if I don't ask this, because I was on a podcast last week, and a gentleman wrote a science fiction novel, series of them. And I'd asked him a whole bunch of questions, and he goes, the one question you didn't ask me that everybody asked me, and then he went and told me what the question was. So I'm going to ask you what everybody, I'm sure, asked you. When you worked for UPS, did you have to wear the brown shorts?
Well, it's funny. When I was a driver, we didn't have shorts. I drove in 1980, and all of us were drivers. So I drove in Plainfield, New Jersey. And no, I did not wear the shorts only because we didn't have shorts back then.
All right. Look, I can check that off my list. Nobody can scold me for not asking you that question. When you were with UPS and you started, you got tapped on the shoulder. Somebody somewhere, supervisor, a team leader, manager, saw Rocky Romanella and he'd be good for this. As you started to take on those responsibilities, how did mentoring and coaching show itself to you so that you can take not only you had to learn a new skill, it was up to you. I mean, at the end of the day, you either met the challenge and learned from it, grow from it. Maybe you made a mistake, but as long as you're learning and growing from it. But what was it like? What were the conversations, the way people were continuing to help you develop who you were eventually going to become as an executive at UPS?
Well, I think it started with the concept of wanting to be the best that I could be and recognizing the biggest thing that I knew was what I didn't know. And I was never afraid to ask for help. I think that was the thing, in this quest to kind of fulfill what my dad had told me, learn your job and learn some more. I recognized quickly that I needed help, and I never viewed help as vulnerable. Now, maybe that's the roots of me always wanted to be a teacher, and this kind of concept that you're always, kind of learning and you learn so much from those wonderful teachers that you had throughout your life. And so for me, it always became that quest to learn and to understand. I'm the what if guy. Well, why does that happen? What if we did this? And so I always had that inquisitiveness. So I think that was the one skill that kind of helped me that I didn't realize I had until I really started working there and started to ask the questions. And so I think that's one of the mistakes people make. They view your desire to ask questions or want to learn more as a sign of weakness. I don't think it's a sign of weakness at all. I think it's a sign of strength, that you're willing to learn, that you're willing to be vulnerable, that people see that you do make mistakes. Look, we all make mistakes. Make them fast, make them small, make them fast, move on. You learn more from your mistakes than actually you ever do from your successes.
I'm a firm believer in that, and I love to hear that. However, there still seems to be this impression when it comes to leading today that leaders, they should admit the mistakes, but they still don't do it. So how do we help leaders really ingrain in themselves it's okay to make a mistake? Or is it just a perception that if you make a mistake, there really isn't those people looking over your shoulder and pointing fingers at you and laughing? Is that just a smokescreen? We really are taking it to heart that mistakes are good as long as we're learning from them and being able to rise above the circumstance.
It's interesting you should ask that, Howard, because for me, I have maybe a different thought on this or a different approach than some others may have on it. So for me, I think the difference is this concept of, and I would speak to people about this all the time, there's a difference between making a mistake, which you should never be embarrassed about or never concerned about. If you're making a mistake and you're doing it from an honest heart, we can work through that. But there's a big difference between making a mistake and making a bad decision. And when people make bad decisions and try to act like it's a mistake and you call them on it, that's when people start to get that defensiveness up. For a quick example, I'll use a very simple example, right? Every day I go to work and I have to be there at 8:00 and I cross a railroad track, and I know the train every day comes at 7:45. And so I make sure I get there. But today I have a big meeting that starts a little bit sooner, and I don't change any of my routine. And now I'm late for the meeting because of not making this change. The train comes and now I'm sitting behind a train. When I get to work and I say, I can't believe it. What a mistake I made, whatever. No, that's a bad decision. You should have made a decision to get up early in the morning. So when people give you this, and that's such a simple example, but the point is that's a decision. That's not a mistake. And I think to answer your question, when leaders are sitting there and they're trying to explain away what clearly is a mistake that they should take ownership for, it's because it's not really a mistake. It's a bad decision. They made a bad decision. And now they don't want to be held accountable for a bad decision. You made a bad decision. And we pay people and companies to make good decisions. So now if you have this pattern of conduct that says you make a bad decision, maybe the way you treat people, or maybe the way you act, or maybe the way you do things, those are bad decisions. Those aren't mistakes. Oh, I made a mistake. I probably shouldn't have screamed at that person in front of everybody. No, that's a bad decision. That's not a mistake, right? So I think that's the difference for me. It's always, is this a mistake that someone made it out of the honesty of heart, the honesty of purpose? They're trying to do something and it just didn't work out. Can live with that, can help them through that. We can work together to fix that mistake. But when you make a bad decision not to do something or to misrepresent yourself or misrepresent the company or not treating people with dignity and respect, that's a decision. And as leaders, we get paid to make good decisions.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. In kind of shifting gears just a little bit to your book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership, I would love to talk more about the book itself, the structure of it, how you've laid it out. And before we do that, I wanted to share something with you that it was in the news this week. And I just thought, oh, wow, this is something I could share with Rocky. And there's going to be an apt metaphor or an insight coming from this. I'm looking at a website called Power Nation TV, and apparently in Michigan, where I grew up, Michigan court rules tire rotation does not include tightening the lug nuts. I don't get that decision, but that's not the purpose for you and I to have that discussion. But I think the metaphor of not tightening the lug nuts versus your book title, you've got to tighten the lug nuts. And as I was looking at the title of your book, I'm thinking every time we have a change, and when you move clear across the country to in your roles with UPS, in some ways, your lug nuts were getting loose because you were being put into a position of discomfort, having to learn something new, a little bit for however long. You're the outsider coming in, learning something new, and you've got to essentially retighten those lug nuts. So that's kind of where I was going as I went from this article to your book. And so how did the title of this book come about, Tighten the Lug Nuts? So I think it's a wonderful metaphor.
Well, thank you. And there's a chapter in the book where I actually talk about how the story that actually happened, that actually born the name Tighten the Lug Nuts. But so I won't go into that story. I'll leave that for the readers to read. But I will tell you, the concept of Tighten the Lug Nuts comes from this concept of don't allow important things to become urgent. And throughout your life and career, you have these important things. To your point, you're moving across the country. There are important things that you need to take care of, and they're loose lug nuts. And if you don't tighten them, when they're loose, you can fix them quickly and effectively. But let's just say you and I don't tighten the lug nuts, and then we go for a ride and the front wheel falls off. Now it becomes urgent, and you can only handle so many urgent things in life. So the concept is tighten the lug nuts. Don't allow important things to become urgent. And if you think about it, think about in the sales, think of some of the coaching that you do and some of the training that you do on the sales side of the house, right? I mean, people are talking about all these different sales techniques, but what are some of the loose lug nuts? Well, you've got churn going on. You're losing customers. No one's really identifying why we've lost those customers. Well, those are loose lug nuts. Now, all of a sudden, you lose your largest customer. Well, now, all of a sudden, the wheels fall off. Now it's stop everything. We're taking everybody off plan because now we got to find out why we lost that key customer. Well, back here, we had loose lug nuts that we never tightened. We had some churn going on. We had 2 contracts that we thought were in the process of being signed, but the customer never signed those contracts. Those were all indications. Those were all loose lug nuts that we never tightened that were important when they were loose, but they became urgent when the wheels fell off. And so that's sort of that's the concept of the book, Tighten the Lug Nuts. Don't allow important things to become urgent. Take care of things you can take care of when you can take care of them. And so it's funny now, I'll see people in the town and they've read the book, obviously. And I've talked at different schools, and people, hey, no loose lug nuts here. Like I just was at Starbucks and the kids like, hey, Mr. Romanella, no loose lug nuts here. So I think it becomes that sort of tagline that people remember. Who knows? I'll probably be the lug nuts guy to somebody. But if it helps and it gets you to take that moment to take that step back and understand that, take care of things when you can take care of them. That's what the key concept is.
I think that's a wonderful metaphor, and it can easily be incorporated into anybody's Speak from the Stage talk. So if I do happen to bring that up, I'm going to give you all the credit. So,
thank you, sir.
So tell us more about the structure of the book. Is there a model within it, or is this the encapsulation of kind of your lessons and what you've learned and what you have put into practice for the folks that have been on your team? What is the kind of the model within this text?
Well, the key part of the book is this character named Joe Cafone. And so why Joe Cafone? So many years ago, one of the things that I believe was an important part of what I did as a leader, what we need to do as leaders, is to challenge your people to be the best they can. And the way you challenge them to be the best they can is don't stop at the first right answer. Now, obviously, Howard, it's a right answer. So people kind of look at you like, okay, I got a right answer here. But if you can challenge them in a positive way, not to stop at the first right answer, a lot of times they'll look past that right answer and they'll start to discover some unintended consequences or maybe other ways to go deeper and wider. And so they may it's a good answer they started with, but they may get a better answer, or they'll know that is the best answer because you challenge them to not stop at the first right answer. So a way for me to do that was I created this character, Joe Cafone. So we're in a meeting, Howard brings this idea, and I never liked the feeling of saying, well, Howard, that's a good idea, but what if you looked at this or what if you looked at that? I always felt like that sort of shut off discussion. So I would say to you, Howard, that's a good idea, but you think Joe Cafone thinks that's a good idea? And people would laugh. And as time went on, people got to know Joe Cafone. And so they would say to me, hey, I already covered this with Joe. Joe thinks this is a really good idea. I go, that's good for Joe, but can you at least explain it to me what you want to do? So Joe Cafone became that way for me to challenge people not to stop at the first right answer and maybe move past that. And so he's the main character in the book because it's a way for me to discuss lessons I learned along the way, experiences that I had, maybe ways to kind of create those aha moments where you tilt your head and you think, okay, maybe that's a different way for me to look at it. But it was so much easier for me to do it through Joe Cafone because I never wanted to write a book that was like, well, I think you should do this, or I would look at it this way, or maybe you should do it this way. It was easy for me just to allow Joe Cafone through his narrative to describe the lessons, some of the mentoring things that happened to me, for me, and things that I did for others. And so for me, that's why Joe Cafone became that natural character that allowed me. And so in those, as you can tell by now, there's always some story attached to something. The teacher in me always brings out that example or that kind of that lesson or an easier way for you to help you connect the dots. So the book is full of all these lessons that happened throughout my journey, whether it's a move we had with the family or an example of something that happened in a work setting.
Excellent. With this book, I'm curious from your perspective is who are your ideal readers for the book? Who should be reading the book now? We're struggling today with leadership all around us. And what still amazes me, given all the books that have been written and the talks about leadership, we struggle with it, around us. And if this book is a path forward, who should be reading this book?
Well, interestingly enough, for me, I believe, and I kind of want to give the disclaimer. I'm not saying that in this way because I'm trying to sell more books. I really think the book is a book I tried to write for all of us because I feel like we're all leaders at one time or another. And so I think it starts with that question that you as an individual, you're trying to understand who you are, what you stand for, and what you won't compromise as a person. And then ultimately as a leader, right? Because
your values.
Yeah, it's right. And so, I think we struggle with that at times. Well, who am I? what do I stand for as this person inside this company, or this person leading a group, or this person doing the best they can? I'm on the PTA. I'm the head of the Little League. I mean, so now I'm participating in things. I'm a parent. I'm a grandfather, godfather. I'm all these different things at different times that thrust me in these different roles. And so I think that as I wrote the book, certainly there's business examples in there, but there's many examples in there that talk about leadership starts with being a good person. It's a person with values. It's a person who are still doing those simple acts of kindness. Hello, Howard. How are you? Hey, thanks for a great job yesterday. Hey, appreciate all you do on behalf of our organization. Those simple things like that are the foundation of good leadership. And I think that's so for me, the book, I get a lot of comments from students, for example, they talk to me about, I'm starting my career, knowing what you know today, what would be something that you would talk to me about? And I always tell people, look, if think about that word you want someone to use at the end of your career. And it's interesting, you're in this meeting and, they'll come up with these great adjectives, right? Aggressive, energetic. Some people will say rich, whatever. And I'll look at them and say, well, what do you think the word is that I would use? And they come up with some nice adjective. No, the word for me is thoughtful. I always wanted to be considered a thoughtful leader. And you just see them stop for a second, because that's not a word that they believe is a success term. But as you're thinking about what is the word you want someone to use to describe you at the end of your career, well, then you're building that mosaic throughout your career to reinforce that term. And so I think that the book helps people in that sense. You have those kind of aha moments along the way where, well, wait a second, I'm thinking that a leader is someone who's successful, gets the title of CEO, or maybe gets the title of CFO, or is managing large groups of people. No, it's not about that. It's about being a good person who leaves things a little better than they found it.
Excellent. I would love, Rocky, to start to shift into some of the work that you're doing today. Before we do that, there's I don't know what you would call it. It's the question everybody asks, anybody that's in team building, coaching, leadership. We have a very dynamic workforce today. A lot of different generations. There's the baby boomer generation, of which, dare I say, I am a part of. There's at least 2 or 3 other generations behind you. Are we really any different generational in what we look for and what we need to succeed, to become the leaders that we should be aspiring to? Or are there challenges today that the newest crop of folks entering the workforce are seeing and experiencing than what you and I saw and experienced as we were on the way for our careers?
Well, I think that's the question everyone wants to talk about. But for me, I think every generation brings something important to the dance. It's funny. I think about when I started at UPS, as we talked before, here is June 15th, 1976. So I had a beard, ponytail, and I knew every word to Stairway to Heaven. You think anybody thought I was going to be anybody? You think anybody, when I walk in, you think somebody say, oh, there could be the president of UPS Supply Chain someday. There could be the CEO of Unitech. No, they were wondering, is this kid going to steal anything from us? What's going on with this kid, right? So no, every generation, I think the difference is understanding that generation. And as they begin their careers, they're in a different place than we were. So a quick example would be, look, if you ask Rocky Romanella, does UPS need Rocky Romanella, or does Rocky Romanella need UPS? I would have answered it, no, I need UPS, because that's how I was brought up. My parents were from Italy. They taught me, you need a job. If you got to work 5 jobs, you work 5 jobs, you put food on the table for your family. And that was my sole purpose. Well, the next generation was, do you need UPS, or UPS needs you? They said, no, UPS needs me. I'm much more educated than my parents were. Well, then this generation today, the question is just a simple question. Well, let's talk about it. Maybe we need each other. We're like, they would tap me on the shoulder on a Monday and say, hey, you're going to Iowa on Tuesday. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full. Didn't ask any questions, needed the job, right? Well, today's generation just simply says to you, they ask good questions. They simply say to you, well, why is this important? Is this a good thing for my career? Why Iowa? Well, that's not being disrespectful. That's not challenging your authority. It's just asking a good question. So there's nothing wrong with people asking. Don't you want people in your care that's going to manage your business to ask you good questions? Yeah. I think that's a good thing. So yes. I think that each generation brings different skill sets, different experiences. And so what happens is they just ask you different questions. So in my generation, if you ask those questions, you were disloyal, right? This generation asks the questions, we want to treat them as, no, they're not disloyal. They're asking you good questions. And it's funny because I'll say that to Debbie and she'll go, I wish you would have asked those questions, right? Well, maybe we wouldn't have moved 9 times. Well, hon, it was different. We have 4 kids. I got to get moving here. They got college tuition to pay for. So I just think today's generation brings a lot. They're so much more prepared than you and I were. They're so much farther ahead than we are. They just ask different questions. So you and I learned many, many years ago that the success in communication is understanding your audience. Well, it's no different with generations. The success and the ability to manage people, build world-class teams in each generation understands what motivates them, understands what keeps them up awake at night. And if you take the time to learn those things about those individuals, they can be as successful or more successful than the generations that we hold in high esteem. Kids don't work as hard anymore as they used to. Nobody wants to work anymore. Like I said, I always think back to those days when I know those people at UPS looked at me and said, "You think this kid can get a haircut here? Or maybe what's going on with this kid here? Why do we hire that guy here with a name like Rocky Romanella, long hair and a beard?" I'm a little bit concerned about that guy, right? And so I think it's each generation has those things that can help make us a better company and a better country.
That's an extremely refreshing answer. And I think we're just going to leave it at that. I mean, I think that is certainly very refreshing and totally resonates for me. And I hope it resonates for our audience as well. Rocky, what is your life like now? I mean, you've had a pretty lengthy career with UPS, being a CEO in the telecom. Now you've got 360 management services. What's your career like these days? Well,
I tell you, I have the greatest title, Howard, I've ever had in all my career, which is Grandpa. So we have 5 beautiful grandkids to keep us very busy, Debbie and I. And so we enjoy our time doing that. From a business side, 360, I do keynote speaking, do quite a few keynotes a year. I very much enjoy doing that. It sort of gives me my teacher fix. And I do breakout sessions. I love the breakout sessions as well, because I feel like you can, in a smaller group, you really can have that more intimate one-on-one contact, helping people, maybe helping them connect the dots a little bit more, almost like a classroom setting. So the keynotes and the breakouts are just a lot of fun for me. I meet some wonderful people. Like you, we do coaching and leadership training, and that's always wonderful. And we like to build, we have base training, but we love going in and spending time inside a company and trying to get to understand their culture, their values, so that the training you do can reinforce the company's culture, values, and the things that they're trying to accomplish inside their organization. The leadership training is very rewarding for us. And then finally, we do a lot of process. As you know, UPS was very much a process company. It's, as you know, one of the famous things is that when we lay out a route, the drivers all make right-hand turns. And that is very true. I mean, you lay the route out so that you make all right-hand turns for 2 reasons. A, it's from an efficiency point of view, most places are right on reds. But secondly, one of the most dangerous accidents is intersection accidents. So if you avoid left-hand turns in an intersection, you have the best chance of avoiding those types of injuries and accidents. So that process improvement mindset has always been with myself and the members of the 360 team. So we do process improvement, try to help people improve their processes, but also train and develop their people on how to implement those so that it's sustainable over the course of time. So from a business perspective, 360 allows me to do the keynote speaking, the training, and the process improvement. So we still kind of have our roots are still taken care of, and we feel we're comfortable. We're in a zone that we're very comfortable with.
Excellent. Now with 5 grandkids, you and your wife, Debbie, you are certainly, they keep you busy as well. And I really love the fact that besides being a teacher, you wanted to be a baseball coach. So are the grandkids and baseball somehow mixing up in your life?
Well, they're young yet, so they will be. But it's interesting. I do have, so I had 4 kids, 2 girls, 2 boys. So my daughter, Jean Marie, is a cheerleading coach. She's an elementary ed special ed teacher, but she's a cheerleading coach. So the coaching was there. My son, Rocky, works for ADP now, but he was a hockey coach, played hockey, coached at University of Delaware, St. Michael's College in Vermont. And then Andrew's my youngest guy, played baseball in college, and he's coaching. So it's interesting. And then Nicole is actually a TV producer, and I'd argue that when I listen to her talk about her job, she's doing a lot of coaching with the talent there. So I think it's interesting that they all have some roots in coaching, and so that's been fun and watching them do that. And of course, Deb's great. I mean, she's the CEO of the Romanella household. And in fact, if we have some time, I would say that in my childhood, my dad was my greatest influence. In my adult life, it's absolutely my wife, Debbie. And there's a lesson that she taught me through her actions and through her thoughts on things that was the number one lesson that I used throughout my business career. If we have some time, I can share that with you.
Please do.
So we go out to dinner one night with a couple we met, and we just just met them. So I grew up Italian Catholic, so you can imagine, you got your routines at church. You always sit in the same pews, like you own the pew, right? No one else can sit in your pew. Of
course. Your name's right underneath. There's like a little sticker with your name on it.
If somebody sits in that pew, you almost look at them like, hey, you know what it doesn't. So, and of course, you do the handshake piece. So we met this couple and we got to know them. So we ended up, Debbie's very friendly. So we ended up going out to dinner. And she says to Debbie one night, she says, hey, who's your favorite kid? And Debbie looked at her and said, excuse me? She goes, well, you got 4 kids. Who's your favorite one? So she goes, I have no favorites. And so now I kind of take a step back and think, I never heard this question asked for. I wonder how she's going to answer it, right? She goes, I have no favorites. Each of them is my favorite. They all feel like they're the favorite. Someone goes, no, come on, really? Is it the boys? Is it the girls? Who is it? She goes, no, they're each of my favorites. Each of them are my favorites and they feel like they're the favorite. And so she goes, how is that possible? And then Howard, she said something that I thought was so thoughtful and so brilliant that I used throughout my career. She said, each of them feels like they're the favorite because each of them gets what they need when they need it. And so because of that, they feel like they're the favorite. And I thought about that. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. And I thought, how thoughtful, how brilliant. And from that moment forward, that's how I managed. If I had a staff and I had a CFO who was a seasoned CFO, what he or she needed wasn't me overmanaging them, wasn't me kind of micromanaging them. What they needed was me showing confidence in them and letting them do their job. And even though I didn't spend a lot of time with them, they felt like the favorite because Rocky lets me do my thing. If I had a director of sales who was struggling maybe or brand new or needed to close a sale to feel good about themselves, and I would spend time with them going on the sales, each of them got what they needed when they needed it. And so even though I was spending the most time with them, they felt like they were special or they were, the favorite because I was spending all my time with them. And so for me, that's how I managed going forward. And from that moment forward, that was sort of the whole foundation of how I managed from my career going forward. And as you know, I managed some very large operations. Some of my staffs were direct reports, were 18, 22 people were direct reports to me. But each of them, I looked at each of them and thought about what Debbie said and said, each of them will get what they need when they need it. And it's amazing how it really does work that way. And so for me, that was my greatest lesson as a leader in my adult life. And it came from my wife, Deb, who is just a brilliant, thoughtful person and just a great, it's like I always say, when you do things that stem from an honest heart, people realize that you're really a good person. You really want to do the right things.
Excellent. We have on the show, we call it Insight to Go. It's where our guest leaves us with a tidbit, a gift of some sort. Could be a reading from the book or quote. And I think you've just left us with a wonderful insight to go, which is introducing us to your wife, Debbie. And she truly is the captain of your ship and just a wonderful story and how she has influenced how you have become a leader in your own right, and a great story at the restaurant. So listen, Rocky, in the time we have left, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, what's the best way to do that?
My website is www. It's the number 3 and the word 60, SIXTY, managementservices.com. It's a very interactive website, and you can easily interact with me. I answer all the questions that come on the website personally. My email address is Rocky, ROCKY, Romanella, ROMANELLA @gmail.com. Please feel free to email me with a thought or a question. The book can be purchased on Barnes & Noble, but Amazon does an excellent job. I'm self-published, so Amazon does an excellent job fulfilling the book. I often get requests for signed copies of the book, so if you email me, I work out that arrangement with individuals. So I'm finding out, Howard, that people really do enjoy signed copies of books and those kinds of things.
Yes, it is. And there's a few back there behind me.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And then on my website, I also have quite a few podcasts. I'll have our podcast loaded up on our website as well. And also YouTube videos. So there's quite a few. Then there's one YouTube video I like to call out just quickly. And that's, I had an opportunity in 2000 to interview and sit with legendary coach John Wooden.
Oh, yes.
I sat with him for 4 hours in his condo in Westwood. And it was just a great time and a great interview. And I was doing it on behalf of UPS, but spent about an hour with him. And so if you're interested in Coach Wooden or like to learn more about Coach Wooden, who's just excellent, it's probably, I read all his books. I mean, he's probably the author I've read the most and emulate the most. But Coach Wooden was a legendary coach at UCLA. And so there's that video. I loaded up that video there. But what came out of that video is the fact that I was talking to Coach Wooden. I said, Coach, I know you're doing this for UPS and myself, and what would you like for your fee? And he said to me, "Oh no, Rocky, no fee. You call me and ask me if I could help you, and no, I was grateful to be able to help you." I said, Coach, that's really nice, but we understand. So he said to me, "Hey, Rock, would you be willing to donate to the Jimmy Valvano Foundation?" I said, "Of course." And so we made a donation to the Jimmy V Foundation, but I was so touched that he would, he was doing it for me as just as a helpful individual. And here's a legendary coach, right? He's on ESPN. In those days, he was 89, I think, when I interviewed him. But I mean, he's legend. And no, I don't want anything. I'm just happy to help you. But if you could, maybe we could turn this into helping someone else. And, if you could please donate to the V Foundation. So in 2019, Howard, every book sold of Tighten the Lug Nuts, I donate $1 to the Jimmy V Foundation. That's sort of my way of giving back to Coach Wooden. And in 19, I think he would have been 108 years old. So I decided, Coach Wooden was always such a huge influence. And then I think it was 25 years that Coach Valvano passed away. So I thought maybe those are the signs. Maybe I could give back again. And so I donate $1 for every book sold. So not only I think you'll enjoy the book, but also you'll be giving back to the V Foundation to find the cure.
Fantastic. I had a guest a long time ago, one of our first guests, Chris Johnson. He leads a couple of networking groups here and really the consummate networker. And we had talked about inspiration. And one of the things that he had introduced me to, and I had never seen it, I probably had seen it, but it just didn't register. I'm from the Midwest. We look at Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes, Detroit Tigers, things like that. The Jimmy Valvano speeches on YouTube are just legendary. And the whole idea of who he was and the inspiration, I just thought it's an inspiring story, and talk about getting people motivated to do better, to be the best you can be. We'll put that YouTube as well as your links to the website, the book link on Amazon. We'll have that all up on the show notes. So give people an opportunity to get introduced to you in the way that they feel most comfortable in. And hopefully we'll add a few dollars to the Jimmy V Fund on your behalf when we have them take a look at Tighten the Lug Nuts. So Rocky, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day and taking you time away from your grandkids, for being with us here on the Success Insight podcast. It has been a pleasure. And really, any final thoughts before we head out today? Well,
I think the thing I'm the most grateful for with this podcast is your thoughtfulness and your preparation. I think that speaks so much about individuals. And I think as we go about our daily routines, think about that as you're interacting with other individuals. Think about how you're perceived by them. Are you thoughtful? Do you take the time to be prepared? Or someone comes in to see you, or you ask them to come in to see you. Are you prepared for them when they come in, or do you give them the time? So I think that's important. And my last thought is just remember, it's never about us as the leaders. It's always about our people. And when you make it about yourself, you really start to lose your ability to kind of inspire, motivate, and really get people to get to do things they never thought they could do before, because they're so caught up in who is this individual? Why is it about them? And so I think just remember, it's never about you as the leader. It's always about your people.
Folks, there you have it. We've just been chatting with Rocky Romanella, international motivational keynote speaker, consultant, CEO, 40 years of experience out in the workplace, and really kind of exemplifies what can happen with boots on the ground experience and becoming a leader, that not only the influence you have on their life, but is also the opportunities that will come your way when you're tuned into how you're showing up as a leader and what you can do to help others along the way. Do go out and check Rocky's book, Tighten the Lug Nuts, The Principles of Balanced Leadership, which is available on Amazon. Also, we'll provide backlinks to the website, 360 Management Services. He is even on Twitter. And we're going to provide links back to the YouTube video as well in the interview with John Wooden. Okay, folks, that's it. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there and have a phenomenal day. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Success Insight podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.